We are going to begin Chapter 2, Deductive Reasoning. We're going to look at if-then statements and their converses in the first section. Then we'll go into the properties from algebra, the properties of equality that we would have learned in Algebra 1, symmetric, transitive, reflexive, all of those. We're going to begin to learn how to prove theorems in geometry. This is a little bit of a complicated section that will carry on through the course. To be able to prove theorems, you're going to have to really know your stuff. So you're going to really need to do the memory work, and we've already encouraged you to do that. As far as memorizing word for word the definitions, postulates, and theorems, and not only having them memorized, but having a visual picture in your mind of what that looks like and how it plays out when you actually use that theorem. Special pairs of angles we're going to look at. We've dealt with those, complementary, supplementary, some things like that we dealt with already in algebra. Perpendicular lines, we know what they are from algebra. We know that they also have inverse reciprocal slopes from Algebra 1. Planning a proof, and then the odd answer solutions and the study guide. So kind of some introduction to some logical reasoning, deductive reasoning, and doing proofs. So here we go with Unit 2.1. Unit 2.1, that's a good way to start logical reasoning, isn't it? A blank page. We hope we do better than that. Here we go. Unit 2.1. Now, an if-then statement, the if part is the given information. The if part is the given information, and the then part is the conclusion that you're trying to reach. The if part is the given information, and the then part is the conclusion you're trying to reach. So the if is the given. So we say, if I listen, or we could say, given that I listen, then I learn. The then part is the conclusion. So the if part is called the given. The then part is the what we're trying to prove, or the conclusion that we're trying to reach. And so given that I listen, the conclusion would be that I learn. If this is true, then that is true. The converse is when you switch the if and the then. When you switch the given and the what you're trying to prove. And so the converse would be if we put the I listen first, the I learn first, and the I listen second. So the converse would be if I learn, then I listen. In other words, you switched it around. Now, we can write a biconditional, but biconditionals are only supposed to be written if the statement and its converse are both true. If the statement is true and its converse is true, then we could write a biconditional. And to write the biconditional, we basically drop the if and drop the then and put if and only if where the then was. So we would say I listen. If and only if I learn. So again, we dropped the if and the then, and we put if and only if where the then was. Okay? Now, a counterexample would be something that proves it wrong, and if there is a counterexample, we're really not supposed to write a biconditional. We just needed to kind of show you how to write one. So a example would be Fred listened but did not learn. Maybe Fred couldn't hear. Maybe Fred just didn't understand. Any questions on that? Counterexamples are something that prove a statement wrong. The statement all birds can fly, if you assume that a penguin is a bird. A counterexample to that would be a penguin. That's with the assumption that a penguin is a bird. Okay? The if part is called the hypotheses. We hypothesize that this is true, or given that this is true. The then part is called the conclusion. We can reach the conclusion that this is true. Given that this is true, or hypothesizing that this is true, we can reach the conclusion that that is true. Okay? All right. Let's look at some of the daily work. What we're going to do is take statements and change it to if-then form. There's this assumption and then this conclusion. The conclusion, the statement is all angles are acute. So in if-then form, we would say if. Now, students have trouble with this sometimes. We have to say some pronoun. It, he, she, they. An angle is an it, right? So we'd say if it is an angle, then it is acute. See how we turned that statement into an if-then statement. The hypothesis is the if part without the if. It is an angle. The conclusion is the then part without the then. It is acute. To write the converse, we would switch the if part and the then part. We'd switch the hypothesis and conclusion. It's still going to say if, then. It's just we're going to make what was the conclusion, the hypothesis, if it is acute. And we're going to make what was the hypothesis, the conclusion, then it is an angle. Any questions on that? A biconditional. A biconditional, you drop the if and drop the then, and you put if and only if where the then was. So we say it is an angle if and only if it is acute. We wrote the biconditional from the original if-then form. You could have written it from the converse form. A counterexample to the original statement, if we go to the original statement, it says if it is an angle, then it is acute. A counterexample would be an obtuse angle. Another counterexample may have been a right angle. Any questions on that part of the daily work? Okay, well, we'll let you do the rest of that on your